So today's video is going to be about preparing FDM printed track bases within PlugTrack. Now, one of the questions that comes up often is how do you fit a large layout plan onto a relatively small FDM printer build plate? So on the screen here I've got the track plan for my Scale 4 Society Jubilee Layout Challenge project. And you'll see that initially, and rather confusingly, the track has been sort of divided up into different coloured areas, and each of those coloured areas represents a panel which is going to be FDM printed. Now, what you can't see at the moment is that each of these panels are connected with a series of connector clips and what are called brick splines, and each of these coloured segments is called a timbering brick. So what we're going to do today is look at how we create the bricks, how we create the splines and the connector clips. Before I go any further, let's just point out that whilst we've created this track plan on our track pad, what we're going to do is create the splines and the connector clips as background shapes. Now, if I go into the shapes tool or shapes menu and look at my recent files and open this one, that perhaps gives us a little bit more clarity of what I'm talking about. So here you can see I've loaded up separately all of the shapes, and if we have a look, let's sort of zoom in a little bit here, we can see the connector clips and we can see the brick splines, and we can also see a brick label which is just here. Now you'll see that the connector clips, let's have a look closely here, are in two parts, and we can colour those to match the colour of our timbering bases. So we've got a purple bit here, and this piece here is called a claw, and this piece that connects to it is called a Tommy bar. So we've got a pink Tommy bar and a purple claw. When we come to export these for printing, we will export them by colour, and Templot will give us all of the purple bits or all of the pink bits or all of the yellow bits or whatever colour we choose when we get to that point. So in today's video we're going to look at exactly how they are created, the connector clips, the splines, the labels, and also how we would take our longer elements of track work and divide them down and make them the right size to fit on our FDM printer. So let's get started. So we're going to start with something really simple. On the screen here I've got a piece of EM gauge plain track comprising of two 45-foot panels, and we can see the fish plated joint just here. Because this panel is about 360mm long and my printer bed is 230mm square, this is going to be too big to fit, so we need to split this into two pieces. So let's have a look at how we would do that. Before we do, let's just consider where we might make the split. Now, the obvious place would seem to be on this fish plated joint in the centre. However, because the sleeper spacings are prototypical, the sleeper spacing is very close together at the fish plated joint just here. So we're going to have a struggle squeezing our connector clip in there. It would be far better to have our connector clip perhaps over here where the spacing is a little bit wider. It'll give us a little bit more room to work with. So let's get on with it, and we'll put our connector clip here. So first thing I'm going to do is switch on the experimental chairing, and if you've not used Templot for a while, you might be surprised to see, delighted even, to see all the chairs are labelled now, because this is plain track and we're dealing with REA chairs. They're all S1 chairs. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is create a duplicate of what I have on screen, and the easiest way to do this is just to hit the little orange arrows which store our control template to the background track plan. Having done that, Templot now gives us a new control template on top of the previous one, and what I'm going to do is shorten this one using the blanking tool, which is just here. So I click blanking, and now I can drag this down to whatever length I like. Now if you remember, I said my 3D printer build plate was 230 millimeters squared, so let's bring this back to, well, let's have it there. So we've blanked off 216 millimeters. So the bit we've blanked is 216. So that is going to fit on our build plate of our printer, no trouble at all. So I'm going to click stop. And now if I click on the background template, which was the one we stored previously, which was the full length, we can make that one the control. And what we're going to do is shorten it. But what I'm going to do is not use the length tool. Again, I want to blank this, but if I click blanking now, it will shorten in just the same way as the previous one did. So I'm going to swap the ends of the peg with the swap ends button here. And again, click blanking, and I can reduce the length of it to there. So we've now got two panels that we're ready to work with. Now this process, these things that we've created are timbering bricks. So we need to tell Templot that this brick here, we're going to do some bricklaying. So let's click the bricklaying button here in the experimental 3D dialog, and we need to give it a colour. Let's choose a colour. Let's make this one blue. There we go, the blue from the top row. Now if I come to this template or this brick, click make the control, it's going to make that the same blue. So let's change this one. We'll have a blue one, and let's have a green one. There we go. So we've now got two templates. We've got a green one and we've got a blue one. I'm going to store that one we've just created, the green one, and it's created for us, which is what Templot does, a new control template on top. Now I'm just we don't need that one, but I'm going to shift it over there and let's put it down here. That's a kind of a spare for the minute. So we've got our green and our blue, that all looks pretty good. What we need to do now is add connector clips. So how do we do that? Well, let's get the shapes tool. There's a couple of ways we could do this. I'm going to show you what I think is the easiest way to do it. Let's add a new clip. And I've clicked on the screen and there's our clip. And it's given us the Tommy bar in green to match our timbering brick. Now we can, with the modify shape tool, we could use the shift with the mouse action and we can move this wherever we like. Now it might make sense to keep that here on the sort of center line of the track. We could, if we wanted to, have it outside of the track. We'll look at why we might want to do that in just a little while, but there we go, there's our brick clip. I'm going to click stop. Now we want a matching set of claws to match our blue brick that we've created. So if we come back here to clip, we can add a paired clip. So let's do that. Now our paired clip has come in green. That's not really ideal. So let's modify that shape. In fact, let's go clip color, and we can choose that same blue color that we used previously. So now we've got our two bricks joined with a clip. That's how easy it is to use clips. Now before we move on, let's have a look at our green and our blue timbering bricks, and we can see joining the edges of the sleepers are little flanges. Now those flanges are really useful because they help hold everything together when we come to 3D print them. But if we look at our newly created join, we can see here that this green flange is overlaying the blue one, and we can turn those off, just make for a slightly cleaner print. So to do that, I'm going to select my green timbering brick and I'm going to make it the control, and you can see there we go, we've got all of our chairs labelled. We'll remove the flange using the Shove Timbers dialog. So under the Reel menu, go to Shove Timbers, and we can see each of the timbers has an identifying number. So this end one here is A24. So let's select that, and that gives us all of the details of A24 within this dialog. And then to remove the flanges, we simply use these two controls here, the turn outside flange and the main side flange. And that's how we do it. So let's now remove this blue one. So we come to our blue brick, let's make it the control, select A16, and again turn the turn outside flange off and the main side flange. We can close that dialog, and that's the job done. Now I kept this spare brick here. I'm just going to click on it and make this one the control template, and watch what happens. Our blue template here has turned to green, and that's because we still got our green selected here in our experimental 3D dialog. So let's come back to this one, make the control, click on the colour, change that to blue. Now if I just come down here and make this one the control, we can see we're back to where we were. We've got our green brick and our blue brick, and there's no flanges joining them. And those two bricks can now be exported individually for 3D printing. So let's have a look at how we might do that. So to do so, we simply click the DXF/STL file export button. Let's go show settings. We want to export a timbering brick only. Let's do the blue one. We could change that. By default it will be on the last colour that you actually used, but let's change it to the, we could change it to the green colour, but no, let's leave it on the blue just for now. We want timbers only for FDM, and export that file. In this case I don't want to put a label on it, so we're going to continue without a label. Click Save, and open that file in 3D Builder. And there we go, there's my timbering brick, my blue brick, all ready to 3D print. We could simply send that file now to a 3D printer. Let's come back to Templot. Let's click DXF file export. Let's choose the green, timbers only FDM, export that, continue without a label, follow the same process, and there's our green brick ready to go, and we've got our Tommy bar on the end there. Now this extra little dam which is printed around the Tommy bar, that helps the Tommy bar to print cleanly. We can turn that off if we wish. I don't know why you'd want to. Might as well leave it there, and then once this has been printed with a pair of snips, we could just neatly snip that dam off and we're good to go. So for our next example, we're going to combine two timbering bricks into one panel ready for 3D printing. And to do that, I've just created a second line of track here, and I've divided that exactly the same way as I did previously, but I've offset the join for no reason other than it looks a little bit more interesting on the screen. So this is going to be our join. Rather than put a brick clip between the rails, I'm going to put a brick clip out to one side, and there might be occasions when, particularly with complex formation, when you might wish to do that. So let's very quickly then set up a clip over here. So I'm going to clip, add a new clip, let's pop it just there, and I'm going to add a paired clip, so that's going to give us our claws onto that Tommy bar, and the claws are obviously the wrong colour, so we can change the clip colour. There we go. So we've got the clip here for these two bits. So let's begin by joining these two sections of green track together, and we're going to do that with brick splints. So let's add a line or brick splint. Now with background shapes, this would be a line tool normally, but because we're working 3D for plug track, that's going to be classed as a brick splint. There are three different ways of doing it. I prefer to use to select at clicked locations under the add new shape dialog just here. And so I'm going to click my first click and then click for my second location, and you can see we've got the 2 points marked there, and then we just simply click add shape and it's going to draw that in for us. And I find that if we sort of triangulate our splints, we end up with something that's a little bit stronger, less likely to flex. So we can pop those in there fairly randomly. Now it's worth mentioning here that when these become 3D printed, these brick splints are sort of half the depth of the sleepers, so it gets ballasted over, so you won't see any of this. Okay, let's do one more just there. Okay, let's now add some blue splints, and there's a couple of ways we could do this. We could, under our experimental 3D box here, we could select our blue colour that way, and just as we did before, we're going to add the brick splint at the clicked locations. Let's go there and there. So let's carry on then. Change my screen around a little bit, and we'll carry on entering these at the clicked locations. And there we go, we've now got our brick splints in. Let's add a couple just to add our joiner connector to the bricks that we've created, and we'll do a couple of green ones also. So let's bring one down to there and another back to here. That will be really strong. So there we go, that's how we add brick splints and connector clips outside of our track plan. It's quite simple really. So to wrap this video up then, I've returned to my multicoloured layout plan we looked at the start of this video. I'm in the experimental 3D box. I'm going to click DXF/STL file export, and what I want to do is create an STL file for 3D printing. So there's a few things to look at here. When you open this up for the first time, the settings will be hidden. You'll see this dialog just like so. But it's important that we select the right colour brick, and I'm going to export this blue one. So let's go to show settings. We need to make sure that the timbering brick only option is selected, and if we click on by brick colour, we could choose whichever colour brick you want. I want this blue one, so I'm just going to click OK. Now at this point we could preview what we're going to export, but I'm pretty confident this is going to work, so I'm just going to click export, the green button. Now it's going to ask me, do I want to continue without a label? I don't want a brick label here, so I'm going to continue. Let's give this a name, let's call it blue brick. Oh, I've already got a blue brick for video. Click Save. Press the green button to open that in 3D Builder, just as we did before. And that will open up in 3D Builder. And there is our blue brick ready to print. And we can see we've got the brick splints, the connector clips, the flanges on the side. On these ones I've trimmed down just as I showed you in the video. So at this point we can click Import Model and click the spanner to mesh fix it. When that's done, I will save the file as an .stl file, and I'll take that into the slicing software for 3D printing. So you can see here I've got that blue timbering brick imported into my slicing software. Now I'm using a piece of software here called Cura, and I will be printing this with a Neptune 4 FDM printer. Now I recommend the Neptune 4 very highly. It's about £152 to purchase at the time recording this, so it's a relatively inexpensive machine. Now up here we can see the profile, and this is currently selected to or set to the fine profile, which will be a 0.12mm layer height. Word or two about profiles: there are a range of them that are baked into Cura as standard, and essentially the difference between them is the thickness of the layers. So if we were to choose the extra fast, for example, which is a 0.28 layer height, our job's going to print much quicker. Now the downside to printing the job quickly is that there will be a sort of a drop off in the quality. Now it's possible to completely customize all of the settings in Cura, and that can take quite a bit of time dialing in the perfect setting. I'm going to bypass all of that here and choose a profile which I've downloaded from the Templot Club forum. This one is Martin Wynne's work. He's tested this out with the Neptune 4 printer, and I know from experience it works a treat. So with that selected, I'm just going to click Slice. And there we go. It's going to take 2 hours and 51 minutes to 3D print this particular job. So all I need to do now is save that to a USB drive, which I can transfer to the 3D printer, stick it in the slot on the front of the machine, press print, select the file, and that will print. And just under 3 hours later, I'll have that 3D printed timbering brick in my hand. So I'll cut to, I won't show all the 3D printing process, that's a bit tedious, but I'll cut to showing you what the final product looks like. And so then, this is the final printed timbering brick. This was the thing that you saw in blue on my screen earlier. That's all printed rather nicely. Now the next job will be to take some resin printed chairs and populate this. So I'll show that as part of the bigger project another time. But whilst we're here, I'll show something which I believe many of the viewers will have seen before. But this is a 3D printed Barry slip. Takes a bit of getting your head around it, but it's basically two turnouts overlaid one on another. Now this was produced using exactly the same techniques that I showed at the start of this video, and actually comprises of 4 separate bits that kind of go together. Anyway, that's it for 3D printed timbering bricks for today. I think my next video will be looking at another laser cutting machine. This time is a kind of a really affordable one, but which I think for a very peculiar reason will be ideal for producing laser cut timbering bases from Templot. So I look forward to bringing that one to you, and until next time, cheerio.